wish I'd met Dave a while ago, because I don't actually have any slides, so everything is going to be focused around me, I'm afraid, this evening. And I'd like to begin by asking you a question I'd like to ponder over. I'd like you to tell me, or to think about, the next 6 months to a year, about the plans that you're making, about the targets you might set yourself. And I'd like you to think, how much of those plans can you be absolutely certain are going to happen in the way that you hope? Well, when I ask audiences of this before COVID, it tended to be around 30%, which isn't a lot. After COVID, very much less. So if you're roughly within that bracket, I'd like to ask you a follow-up question. How does this level of uncertainty get reflected in the way that you work? How does it get reflected in the conversations you have with your clients, with your stakeholders, with your teams? How does it get reflected in the way you treat people and maybe even yourself? Now, this is really hard for us because deep-rooted in our psyche is a need for certainty. And we value being in control above an awful lot else. But you know, in times of uncertainty, trying to be certain can become very problematic. Because you know, there aren't always answers, and we look for them. We focus our attention on trying to achieve those predetermined outcomes. And in doing so, we miss often the emerging opportunities and the emerging challenges. And if we get something wrong, or something unexpected happens, it can be seen as a sign of incompetence and become a source of shame. So often when we're trying to be certain, we reach back to the past to understand our futures. We rely heavily on the guidance of experts, people with the most experience. But in uncertain times, that can be misguided. Philip Tetlock's research, The Good Judgment Project, is a beautiful illustration of this. He wanted to understand the impact of expertise and experience in times of volatility and uncertainty. So he put together two groups. Group A, intelligent analysts. Group B, a kind of mishmash of people from all walks of life. I call them the randoms. And he set both of these groups the same tasks. He gave them scenarios where he wanted them to predict what was likely to be happening. And he gave the intelligent analysis, not easy to say, access to privileged information, confidential information to help them, which makes these results even more astonishing. Time and time again, it was the randoms who were the most accurate. 30% more accurate than the intelligent analysts. Now, this is in no way to decry or denigrate people with great expertise and experience. Of course not. But it is to give pause of thought that in uncertain times, we have to broaden our perspective. We need to cultivate a more open mindset and change our approach. We need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We need to get comfortable with not knowing. Niels Bohr was one of the founding fathers of the quantum theory, a clever chap. And he acknowledged that it wasn't until his team and him admitted that they had no real idea what was going on that real progress was made. They saw things they hadn't seen before. They began to understand things. Instead of having their ideas transposed onto what they were seeing, expecting to see, they began to open up and see more. Now, this may be unsettling but we have been living through a paradigm shift where uncertainty has made its presence known in no uncertain terms. And in the very depths of that uncertainty have shone wonderful examples of human ingenuity, resourcefulness, and adaptability. You may live in a community and saw the grassroots response and recognised how powerful and meaningful that was in the middle of our pandemic. You may have visited your local hospital and seen that when cut off from central command, hospitals up and down the country had to look inwards at their own resources and redeployed them to meet their emerging needs. Or you may work with or for a business that was quick to adapt its business model to not just meet the emerging needs, but to capture some of those extraordinary opportunities. Every single one of the examples that you may have experienced or seen or read about show that if you get the conditions right, uncertainty is a state of high learning, growth and innovation. And I feel particularly passionate about this. I believe that if we get this right, if you learn the dance of uncertainty, it unveils potential in a way that nothing else can. And the reason I feel particularly passionate about this is because this has been my experience. 10 years ago, I set up a grassroots initiative to regenerate my local high street. I had absolutely no resource. I wasn't asked to do it, I had no permission. I didn't even have any experience of any kind of doing this. I'd spent 15 years working in marketing and media. Because I had no resource, I had to work with the resources that were available. So I started with the local businesses. Because I had no idea, I had to ask questions. I had to go and find out. And in doing that, I discovered something really important. I had kind of used my experience to assume that the high street problem was a marketing problem. And I was to discover it wasn't. I was to discover that there were some hidden challenges that if we didn't address, would sabotage any effort that we would have tried to achieve. The first meeting we had, there were 2 businesses that attended. Within 18 months, we had worked with over 200 different businesses, different organisations, the library, the hospital, the schools, everybody got involved. We held 21 community events. We launched a brand that was engaging and trusted by the community. We had transformed the high street. And it far exceeded my expectations. Interestingly, it wasn't until I was doing my MA in leadership a couple of years later that I was able to reflect and realise that this success wasn't in spite of all that uncertainty, it was because of it. And during the studies that I did, I was able to find other leaders. I met with other leaders. I've since worked with other leaders who actually demonstrate this over and over again. They put uncertainty at the front and foremost of their agendas. From high corporate organisations right through to the most extraordinary grassroots leaders that I've had the privilege of working with. People who, like me, set up their organisations with nothing. No resource, no experience, nothing. But unlike me, went on to have a global impact. Like young Adam Smith, a school dropout. He set up the Real Junk Food Project with one other person. And within a matter of years, the Real Junk Food Project organisation was working across 47 different countries. It teaches you never to overlook or underestimate anyone. Now, these leaders all range in size and age and all sorts of industries, but they share one very, very powerful thing in common. They share a mindset, an open and engaged mindset, the scavenger mindset. The scavenger mindset cares little what's happened in the past. It shrugs in the face of conventional wisdom. It makes the most of what it has by focusing in on what matters most. It is a mindset that looks across the landscape and other things that people would actually discard or overlook. The scavenger mindset sees the potential in. There are 3 key characteristics to the scavenger mindset that they all share. They are pragmatic. They know they don't know, so they make it their business to find out. The scavenger mindset knows humans are fallible, that mistakes are going to happen, so they focus on what matters most, which is building the capacity within their teams, so that whatever life throws at them, the teams will be able to cope. Second characteristic is resourcefulness. They're highly resourceful people. They're able to get round obstacles and see limitations as no problem. But they also know that what matters most is to maximise the efforts of their teams by making sure they feel valued and connected, not just to each other, but to the aim of the organisation. And that they have some ownership of that. And that brings out the best in everyone. And when you put together pragmatism and resourcefulness, you create an environment which allows innovation to flourish. You see, innovation isn't about having lots of ideas. That's brainstorming. Innovation isn't a set of skills that sits behind a desk or belongs behind a door in a department. Innovation is a mindset that everyone can share. It is an intelligent inquiry of life. Innovation is nearly always born premature, so it requires nurturing time to shape and build it and make sure that it works. A scavenger mindset reveals potential in teams, in people, that we don't see with the naked eye. And I've got a very simple tool for you to take home and practice in front of the mirror tonight, which will help you to adopt a scavenger mindset immediately. You kind of need to adopt your inner teenage for it, but it's called the so what swagger. So you do, you're going to do a little snarl. So what? So what we don't have the budget? So what? I don't know how to do this. So what? We've never done this before. So what? I'm scared. So what? So what are you going to do about it? So what can you do? What will you learn? What do you need to find out? So what? It's kind of defiant, it's challenging, but it opens up potential. And when you've done that, you can then look at the here and now questions that help you to really make the most of what you have. Question number 1. What do you have? No, really, what do you have? Look again, look deeper, and you will find potential in people and in yourselves that perhaps you hadn't understood. Ask the questions. Do you know what motivates people? Do you know where those hidden challenges lie? I thought the hidden challenge, the challenge in the high street was all about marketing. No, it was about mindset. It was about a business community that was completely disparate and splintered. When you understand what you have, when you've mapped out what you've really got, you go beyond the boundaries, you knock down walls and see what's open to you. Then you can ask question number 2. Knowing that, what can we be? The reimagining process. And when I was working on the high street, if it hadn't been for the understanding I had of the business community and working closely with them, I wouldn't have understood the fact that the way to regenerate the high street wasn't to meet customer needs, because you know what? They weren't equipped to do that. But what they could do was to meet community needs. And that is where we started, and that is why they were successful. Once you have an idea about what you can be, you then go on to the last question, which is, so now what do we need to do? So what do I now need to find out? And this is innovation in action. These are small steps that you can start testing, exploring, discovering what works, what doesn't work. Nothing about the scavenger mindset is about tearing up what you've done and starting from scratch. The scavenger mindset is about working with what you already have, pushing out the boundaries to bring in greater potential. So if, as you look ahead to the next 6 months, to the next year, you see uncertainty on the horizon, I'm just going to finish by asking you this last question. So what are you going to do to embrace uncertainty and kickstart your innovation?